Potentially what people are calling the biggest leak of all time has happened, and it's all thanks to the FTC. Xbox, as we know, the Activision deal is pretty much a guarantee at this point, and there's been a stack of leaks that have come out of it, and Jesus Christ, there's been some juicers. The first thing we're going to discuss is an email that went out from Phil Spencer, and it's all talking about potential future acquisitions. Now, I'm not going to read this out because this email is giant, and it's mostly just talking about little bits and bobs, but the main highlight for this, Phil Spencer is saying that Nintendo is the prime asset for us in gaming, saying they are the ones they would love to buy. It would be a career-defining moment, in his words. Now, this is an email from 2020, so it's 3 years old at this point, but it really goes to show what their thought process is when it comes to being able to gain kind of relevance in the gaming market. Now, since this has happened, of course, they bought Bethesda, they bought Activision. Guys, would Xbox buy Nintendo be a big deal for us in the PlayStation space? How would this impact us? And can you ever see this coming to reality? Phil, let's come to you first.
Well, Davey, I did have a look at this email and it made me laugh. Made me laugh for a couple of reasons. And the first one I want to highlight to you is the subject line of this email. So Phil Spencer, he's sending out important emails containing relatively high-level information and plans. And the subject is random thought. Now, does that scream high-level professional to you? It didn't to me. I work in marketing. I work in a global company. If I'm getting emails like that, I'm not really taking them that seriously. And I don't know if I take everything that was in this email completely serious. And as you said, there has been a bit of time that has passed since this email because it came out, I think, he was sending it around the 8th of June, 2020. So we've had a bit of time. There's been a couple of years now, so we can see what actually came true. But reading it through, the one that actually made me drop my jaw was the mention of Valve. They were planning, or they were looking at the possibilities of acquiring Valve. Wow. Now, I feel like that would be the biggest deal if they acquired Valve. They would unite PC as Xbox. It would become Xbox because everything that the majority of people play on PC is via Steam and via Valve. So if they acquired something like that, that's the big dick in the room. I don't feel like it's Nintendo. Nintendo's huge news, but if they acquired Valve, my God, they take over that space. And that we're not even talking about PlayStation. We're not talking about Nintendo. That's the whole PC space they take over. But the ones they reference as well is Warner Brothers and ZeniMax. So ZeniMax, they're the guys that own sort of Bethesda, and they ended up taking over those. I think it was March 2021, right? And that became part of the Xbox studio. So that actually came true. That was the only thing that I believe within that email came true. But it was funny the way they sort of referred to ZeniMax within that email because they put it down. They say the downside is its core. It's less broad, no mobile, and it's more American and European when they're comparing ZeniMax to Nintendo. Now, if I'm ZeniMax and I'm seeing that email after we get bought, I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, dickhead. You know, he's putting us down here. We want to be the AAA studio. We want to be the main man. And he's put us down. So I've got a problem there if I'm working for ZeniMax and I'm working for Bethesda. Now, under Xbox. Because they never really valued them. They're trying to buy gaming relevance. Now, that made me laugh. Buying gaming relevance. So they're going around acquiring studios. This is what the vast majority of this email was about, was which studio they wanted to buy. But the term of buying relevance. Now, do we feel like Bethesda is relevant? Do we feel like Warner Brother Games is relevant? Do we feel like Valve is relevant? I don't know. Do you guys know? I'd love to hear your views on if they acquired those ones. But Nintendo, I think, is very relevant. Now, can you imagine a world where Mario, Batman, Zelda, they're all on Xbox Game Pass? That's mind-blowing. I think that would change the world. It really would. And when it comes to Xbox, they need those titles that they have the pedigree of Nintendo. So I can see that being their main aim. I could potentially see that happening. And it's just down to how deep Daddy Microsoft's wallets and pockets are, because they keep on going. We know how much money they've shelled out for companies in the past, and I think they're just going to keep going. It's the same as the acquisition for Mo Salah now with the Saudis. They're just going to keep on going. They offered 100 million. They go 200 million. They gone 250. Jurgen Klopp's there going, nah, he's never going to leave us. We're coming up to January. He knows he's going because we're getting the top dollar for Mohamed Salah. God bless him. And I think the same is going to happen to Nintendo at a point. It will happen. I guarantee it. It's got to happen at some point. It's an obvious thing for them to get. If they buy it, I think their offering becomes a hell of a lot stronger. It's not a threat to PlayStation. I'm still going to be a PlayStation loyalist. I'm still going to love PlayStation. But there is more of a chance that I will buy an Xbox in the future if they acquire a Nintendo. And that's how I feel after reading that email.
Spence, before I have my say on this, let's hear yours.
Like you said, Phil, this email is a joke. Just the amount of, well, to be fair, unprofessionalism, I suppose. He's very just open with his thoughts. And he's just, random thought as a subject line is ridiculous. I get sacked at work for putting that in my subject lines. That is crazy. To be fair, he speaks from the heart, I think, which I respect. And I think that's quite a nice thing to have from your employer. But it's wild. And all the stuff he says, Nintendo, they could not throw enough money at Nintendo. They literally couldn't. Nintendo would never accept the offer. I think even if they offered them like $5 billion or $10 billion or however much, I do not think Nintendo would accept. I think they're trying to build their own path. They've got the games to keep growing and the system to keep growing. I think they're good. They won't get bored. And I think this entire email and everything we know about Xbox anyway just goes to show they don't have a plan. They've never had a plan. They're trying to find a solution by chucking money at everything. They have no idea what they're doing. They don't for the future. And they're just going to try buy their way out of this console generation. And I think it's just a bad way to go about it. I think these acquisitions, they need to just shut up, make an actual plan, instead of just thinking, people like Nintendo. Let's make them an offer. Actually plan something. PlayStation are buying studios that benefit them. Xbox are just buying studios. It's not the same thing. I feel like they're not being smart with their acquisitions at all. They're just trying to chuck money at whoever's willing to be bought. And Nintendo being the one they want is ridiculous. Do I think if they paid, it would be a threat to PlayStation? I don't think it'd be a threat, but it's hard to say because they are very different. Like most Nintendo players are either Xbox boys anyway, because Xbox don't have games, so they're playing on their Switch. That is what it is. And then they tweet about they're playing on their Xbox, but they're not. Or it's just kids. Kids predominantly prefer Xbox anyway. Randomly, I don't know why. But I think it's just because it's all digital thing, just download it, it's easy for them. Don't have to go to the shop, just ask mum for a credit card. Easy job. And I think that's it. And Game Pass is great for kids as well. So many games. So I don't think this really impacts PlayStation too much if this were to happen. Granted, it would impact them. But not as much as I think Davey thinks it would.
You guys are downplaying if they bought Nintendo so bad. Nintendo are the best publishers in the world. Like we say about PlayStation's hit rate, it ain't Nintendo's hit rate. Nintendo put out 90s every fucking time. They literally don't miss, Nintendo. And as much as they might not be, elevating the wider narrative space like PlayStation do with like the likes of The Last of Us or God of War, they know fucking gameplay like no one else. And nobody can deny that. You play Smash, you play a Mario, you play a Pikmin, any of these games, you play Zelda, they smoke anything that PlayStation put out in terms of gameplay. Zelda smokes anything we've got from first party. It does. Hands down. In terms of gameplay creativity, it's on shit hardware, which is creative hardware. Don't get me wrong. The Switch is so fucking good for what its intended purpose is. For that pick up and play, you can dock it, you can take it with you, you still get a console level experience. Amazing piece of hardware. Is it the most powerful piece of kit on the market? No. Is it the best way to show off to your mates this looks pretty? No. But what it does do is got gameplay chops. If Xbox were to buy Nintendo and they became a studio in their wing, we would be fucked. PlayStation would be fucked, I'm telling you now. If you had that level of graphical fidelity that Xbox would be able to put the hardware into, with the people that are able to make that work on Nintendo, you're fucked. We're done. Pack up shop, guys. We got nowhere to go. We really don't. We really don't. The Switch puts out gargantuan numbers. Like gargantuan. You think about Pokemon, most successful IP on the fucking planet outside of maybe Rockstar with GTA. I can't think of anything that rivals it. Nothing. And then when you've got the likes of like, you know, the hardcore fan pleasers like Metroid and Zelda, let alone the kids going in with Mario, which appeals to literally everyone on the planet. PlayStation have great IPs. We don't have Mario. We don't have Zelda. They're a totally different ballpark. And the only reason they're not a threat to us now is because their hardware design is so different. They cater to a completely different subset, and the two can work in parallel with each other. If you've got it all based around the Xbox, it's done, guys. It's fucking done. Now, in reality, will this ever happen? No. No, it won't. There is not a single regulator on the planet that would sign off that deal. No one would. To be able to have those two working together, no chance. Like, there's publishers that are massive, like the likes of Activision. Huge publisher, one of the biggest publishers on the planet, if not the biggest. You know, with the likes of World of Warcraft and fucking Call of Duty. Nintendo's another ballpark. There's no chance. There's no way, like you said, Spence, there's no way this is going to happen. Never in a million years. It's a wish list item. But if it did, you guys are underselling the impact it would have on video games. It would completely shatter the market. It really would. You would go from being in a triple threat console generation to a duo. And at that point, if Microsoft were willing to put down whatever money it would take to get them, PlayStation are in a no-hope situation. No matter what you do, we are then in a niche place where we cannot compete with that.
I don't think we are.
Really?
I think the issue is, right, the reason for it, a reason why I don't think we are, is it would just be a case you just own both. Because that is all it would be. It'd end the console war. You just own both, because it's not like if this happens and they did acquire Nintendo, PlayStation would suddenly stop making masterpieces. Sure, they might not be on the scale of Nintendo's with the power of the Xbox, but your God of Wars, your Last of Us, your Spider-Mans, they're not just going to suddenly disappear. You're still going to have reason to play your PS5.
That's true. But, I mean, there's a few things that would take a hit from this. If they did buy them, let's say, for example, they did buy them. The issue is, Microsoft, say what you will about them, they're not exactly inventors, right? They don't really come up with any unique ideas. They really don't. They're very much a case of they master what they tend to do, which is like basic products. I think it was Steve Jobs said before. I think it's like a famous quote that he had that he was recorded where he was saying that like they're great in what they do, but they don't actually come up with anything. They just kind of steal ideas from everyone else. They don't really invent anything. They don't innovate in any way. Nintendo are prime innovators in this space, in the same way that Sony are. The Sony come up with all these unique things, which now Xbox copy with a new controller and everything else. They kind of just copy stuff, Xbox, and they do it really well, and they do it to a great level. I think you'd lose a lot of that character if Nintendo were bought, and it would be a shame to see them go, because they do offer such a unique perspective to play. Sony would exist, but it wouldn't be the driving force of the console war. And I hate console wars, I do. But when you're market leader in a space, you've still got to compete with everyone else to stay on top. And if you're so far below, it's quite hard to find your way back up. It really is. Xbox have been able to find relevance, and this is why they're saying relevance, right? They got to find relevance because they're so far behind by buying people. Sony will never be able to be in that position because PlayStation is their moneymaker. If they were put down to third place or second place with such a minor stake, they've got no way to really be able to fight back and claim that ground. And sure, they may have a few great games, it would never help the Saturn. The Sega Saturn had some incredible experiences, but they were so far behind the PlayStation and the Nintendo that they couldn't find relevance. And that's when your brand starts to slip into obscurity. So it's a terrifying thought experiment, and one that hopefully will never come to pass. That's just my thoughts.
The thing is, though, Davey, PlayStation owners, we've always owned a Switch or the Nintendo console as well. Xbox owners, generally, as Spencer rightly said earlier, a lot of them would own a Nintendo console. And Switch owners, obviously, they own the Switch. Everyone owns a Switch, right? Everyone plays Nintendo games. And you're right, Davey, Nintendo fuck. Everyone knows this and no one's denying that. And if it did go over to Xbox, as I said in my opener, I would just get an Xbox as well. I've had Xboxes in the past. Just because I'm on a PlayStation show and I fly the blue flag, it doesn't mean I'm against Xbox in any way. I don't believe in the console war. I'm a multi-console kind of guy, right? I try and buy pretty much everything. I quite like just having the latest tech in every kind of aspect. It's only the newest Xbox that I haven't really bought. I own every other console. But these games going over to Xbox, the only thing I worry about is if that quality that we come to expect with Nintendo starts to slip. Okay? So they go over to Xbox, and they're used to be working in a box. And now this box doesn't have walls, doesn't have a ceiling. They can just do whatever they want with that hardware because they're unleashed. I'm taking it back now to Capcom, when they had to deal with the limitations of the older platforms, and they were geniuses at it. They had to put doors into games that we cannot mention because of the loading problems. They had to have low polygon count because the processors couldn't put out that graphical fidelity that they wanted. Now, when they moved up to the bigger hardware, they started to experiment, and those games took a dip. They really did. They went more action because they could. They started to go higher on the graphics because they could, and those games suffered. So I believe if Nintendo went over to Xbox, we possibly could see a little decline in what we're used to with Nintendo, and that would hurt. And you'd lose a lot of people, you'd lose a lot of trust, and ultimately that's what Xbox and Phil Spencer himself, he's trying to buy gaming relevance. So if he takes Nintendo and he spoils them, I'm coming for you, Phil. I'm out there.
You're totally bang on, Phil. I completely agree with you. The one thing that's become consistent over this whole console generation is no matter how many people they buy, they're incompetent at running the studios. And if they grow even more, it's only going to become more incompetent. The thing is, Nintendo just got a special sauce. And as you said, there's something in having boundaries to your hardware that pushes something just really special out from people. You think about what Kojima was able to do on a PS1. And he wanted to do so much more with that hardware, and he just couldn't do it, so he had to design it in a specific way. As you mentioned with the game that can't be mentioned 1. What would it be if it was a case that it didn't have pre-rendered backdrops, it didn't have these door transitions? It would lose the identity of what made that so special. And Nintendo are able to get their games and to make them so well done because they're working around hardware which is old as fuck, and was old as fuck from the time it was launched. And they've just made that into something that, yeah, let's just focus. We don't have to focus on having the best graphical fidelity. We don't have to focus on having these fully voiced characters. We can just have people going with walls of text, and it's still relevant in 2023 because the gameplay fucking bangs. You would definitely lose some of that identity, and that's a real good point that you've raised there.
I was going to add on and say, chances are, yeah, the way Xbox has been running their studios since they've acquired them, it's been downhill for every studio, literally all of them. But also, even if they did acquire Nintendo, Xbox don't release games. They just don't. Nintendo, as much as they do, they don't release them frequently, especially not their big hitters. They don't get big hitters, even if Nintendo and Microsoft combined and they were all working on big games. I think PlayStation would still be chucking out more big experiences than they would, because we get a Zelda, once every 3-4 years. We get a Mario once every 3-4 years. That's not like a big Mario like Odyssey or this Wonder we're getting. Like, this is the first big Mario game we've had since Odyssey. And Odyssey was what, like 2018?
I would have agreed with you until I had a child. And I realized how many Nintendo games there are. My Switch collection, since Cass has got into the Switch, has grown immensely. With the likes of Kirby, the likes of Metroid for myself, Mario Party, Mario Golf, Mario Soccer. There's so many.
Those
It's
aren't the big
surprising.
hitters, though.
They still bang, though. They
wouldn't
still
on an
bang.
Xbox.
And Spence, the thing you're not taking into consideration here is the lifespan of Nintendo games.
That's true.
Nintendo put out a Mario, you are playing it for years. It's not the kind of one and done chuck kind of situation. Kids, younger people, they'll play it over and over again because they love this game. They're not even doing it for achievements. They haven't been suckered in like we have on PlayStation to have to do everything in the game to get this wonderful credit that doesn't mean anything because they're never, well, that's a different story. But anyway, they're not even gamified in that section, right? They just do everything in the game because they love the game. Nintendo games stick around for yonks. And I think if Xbox got them, this is perfect for them. Honestly, it really is. If they got hold of those IPs and they were able to kind of keep that quality, keep that creativity, honestly, yeah, it would just be a great service. And I'd be buying one, frame one. I really would.
I think we all would, to be fair. And I think all gamers in general would. It would be a thing that if they did get them, like Phil said in his email, it's a career-defining moment. It would suck because you'd think, oh God, there's another one gone. Like the same way I hated it when Sega went out after the Dreamcast. I love the Dreamcast. To see it go was such a shame. But that would be reality. And that would be the way it is, and we'd just have to live with it. I think it does open up another conversation, which is where I was hoping we'll build to, in that obviously with Xbox, they've showed their hand like 100 times over now that they're happy to buy publishers. And it's this consolidation of the gaming industry at large. Now, for us over at PlayStation, we do buy people, of course, but we mostly buy studios. And the biggest purchase that we've made of recent years is, of course, Bungie, which is a massive shining jewel to our armor. But it's not the likes of Activision or Nintendo, right? Totally different kettle of fish. Does the fact that they seem to still be on this whole buying spree, does that just worry you a little bit in terms of the consolidation of the gaming industry? Or is it fair game when you got the likes of Embracer and everyone else buying up studios left, right, and centre? Is it fair game for them, or is it a different rule for Xbox compared to everyone else, guys?
I think it's unfortunately fair game, but it's not the world I'd like to be living in. I think we're in a dark era of gaming where we're getting bangers, sure. They're phenomenal. We're getting exceptional games. But everyone is trying to be bought or to buy. And it's just a shame because it limits games. When games are the reason we're here. We're not here for the console, ultimately. We're here for the games that are on there. And these being bought and being limited like that, it's just peak, man. It's the dark timeline. It really is. Even if it means we're getting our Spider-Mans, our Last of Us, our sick fucking games. Ooh, Helldivers 2. But it's still a shame, because now there's a whole category of people over on Xbox that I can't play it with, or can't play those games with. But really, what you're doing with an Xbox anyway. I think it's bad, but it's the future. I think just buying stuff, it's just the way it's gone. Everything works on money, ultimately. And yeah, it's just the way it is.
What about yourself, Mr. Hoy?
Do I like this? No. Can I change it? No. And the more studios that we have, the more games we get. And ultimately, as a gamer, that's what I want. I want the variety. I want to pick and choose the games that interest me. You know, I want to listen to podcasts that are well informed, that I respect. And when they say the next Metal Gear Solid is going to be a banger, I'm jumping on that. I really want to get that game. But this, guys, is just business. You've got to take it out of this video game sphere and you've just got to look at it a bit more objectively. And ultimately, this is the way the world operates these days. Companies buy companies all the time. This isn't a new thing, and it's not going to stop anytime soon. I know we can talk about Xbox buying too much and owning too much of a market share, and yes, there is a top cap on that, but they're nowhere near that just yet. And ultimately, They've got very deep pockets, as we talked about earlier, and it just keeps on going and going and going. Microsoft, they have the bank to be able to do this, and it's just going to keep happening. If it's not Nintendo, then it's just going to be another company, and they're just going to keep doing it. This is their plan, and we've just got to accept it and just hope that the studios we love and we want to play on PlayStation don't end up on Xbox. And there's nothing we can do about it, but we just got to keep our fingers crossed, because ultimately it could happen, because they got much more money than us sitting in their bank account.
Very true. Great points from both of you. I think for me, when it comes to this, in terms of consolidation of the gaming industry, I don't mean this from an Xbox point. So for all those Xbox fanboys out there thinking of this, oh, they've been so critical. No, I'm being completely impartial with this. I don't want Sony to buy any publisher. And I mean that. I don't want them to buy Capcom. I adore Capcom. Do I want them to be in the first party? No. Do I want Square Enix, which is the one that people throw around all the time? Let's get Final Fantasy exclusive. No, I do not want that. I do not want them over here, because I like the fact that these studios who have got independence and been independent for such a long time, that people from all different consoles, all different backgrounds, are able to experience their games and grow a fan of that franchise, are able to still continue doing that. I think the best way of doing it is the same way that, say, Nintendo and us on PlayStation do, which is you build up a studio from the ground up, a studio which is kind of grown alongside the platform, and then you inaugurate them. Then you get them as part of the family. That makes the most sense. It's organic. It's a great way to just be able to celebrate these studios the same way that I was saying earlier in the podcast, Arrowhead Need to Be Bought. They're a studio that are renowned for being on PlayStation. Their last release in Helldivers was with us and PC. It makes sense. Bring them in. But don't buy up Capcom. Don't buy up your Squares. Don't buy up your EAs. Leave them go. Because the more that you consolidate the gaming industry, the less chance you have for individual vision to shine. If a couple of execs go on a course and they learn that live service is the future, it's what everything is, and it's all owned by one company, all of a sudden, all those franchises, all those dreams that you have of seeing all these different things come back and be single player focused and be for the players and all that, it goes out the window while they all chase whatever that company exec's vision is for his company, and they all have to mold and adapt to that. And you lose that if it's all controlled by a couple of voices rather than hundreds of potential voices. And that's my worry when it comes to this.